Nobody doing it better. Y'all some lightweights. Malik Wright, up all day and all night, pushing all the buttons up to something till it's alright. He looking at it from all sides and angles. Got a stripes on his body like he played for the Bengals. Oh man, there's no one discussing it. The gang, they stay, they either did it or done it. Man, I love it, cause all they ever do is win. So kick that, relax, the TWSN.
Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Sit Down with Malik Wright morning show presented by the Wright Way Sports Network. I'm your host, Malik Wright, joined by my co-host, my producer, who's also my co-host, and Danielle Almeida, who's on the ones and twos, and we appreciate him as always. Make sure you guys do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload content from the TWSN studios. Daniel, was a lot of action happening, not just in the NFL world, but also in the NBA world. So I want to start off our headlines today with some of the, I guess, the big news, right? We saw Karl Anthony Towns get traded to the New York Knicks. And everyone's here talking about Karl Anthony Towns' emotions. Jimmy, who's the YouTube manager, you know me, man. I don't really give a damn too much about people's emotions when it comes to, trades and stuff like that. I feel like what's being lost in all this is Julius Randle is now a member of the Timberwolves. Donte DiVincenzo is now a member of the Timberwolves. And so here's what I think. Most people believe that both teams didn't get better through this. Here's my thought process. I always felt like the spacing was a little poor with the Minnesota Timberwolves with Cat and Rudy Gobert. It was always going to be a decision of we have to find out who our guy is going to be. Is it going to be Rudy Gobert or is it going to be Cat? This is the reason why teams don't usually go after two big men, because usually the spacing is poor and things will fluctuate at points. It got to a point where I feel like Rudy Gobert was almost like a defensive liability at points out there. I don't know if that's because of the poor spacing. I don't know if that's because people realize, okay, the guy can't defend when it's, when you basically drag him out of the paint. You have him defending from the boundary. I don't know what it is. But it was very clear to me that something was going to have to happen. The first 2 years that they tried to make this thing work and it didn't work, it was clear to me a decision was going to have to be made, and that decision came at the expense of Karl Anthony Towns being traded to the New York Knicks. Now, let me be clear when I say this, Daniel. As a Celtics fan, as a Boston Celtics fan, I'm fearful. This trade makes me uncomfortable. To me, I feel in my core that the New York Knicks got better. I feel in my core, Jalen Brunson, Karl Anthony Towns, Josh Hart, Mikal Bridges, man, that's a scary team. That's a scary team. And you combine that with Mitchell Robinson, who I still believe is one of the more underrated centers in our game. Man, I don't know if the East is going to be that easy for the Celtics this year. I think the Knicks are going to improve. And you want to talk about what they get in a big man. They get a consistent big man. They get a guy that's actually truly a threat consistently behind the three-point arc in Karl Anthony Towns. As someone once called him, the greatest scoring big man of all time. A lot of people were disappointed to see Donte DiVincenzo leave. It's whatever. I think a guy like Anthony Edwards could do a lot more with having a Donte DiVincenzo on his side. But Daniel, Mikal Bridges, no longer forced to be the guy?
Mm-hmm.
Man. And I agree with you, Mike Straw, our guy, Mike Straw. We got to have you on the show here soon. He says, losing Hartenstein, I think, is still a big blow. 100%. But, man, if you want to talk about offsetting a blow a little bit.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, Cat's going to have his games where he's ball hogging. He's going to have his games where he's going to get in foul trouble. But one thing you're getting from him that you didn't get from Julius Randle is you're getting consistency. At least you're getting that. And you're getting a guy that I won't say he won't shrink, because sometimes he does tend to struggle a little bit, but you're getting a better player, I believe.
Yeah.
I think Karl Anthony Towns is a head and shoulders better player than a Julius Randle. And that's what you're getting. You did sacrifice depth. You did sacrifice Dante DiVincenzo. Man, I think that the Knicks are scary. And for the first time in my life, I've never had to say this, but I'm scared of the New York Knicks, Daniel.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts?
I have a lot of thoughts on this. And to be quite honest with you, this is an amazing move for the Knicks. My biggest questions, and I'll dive into this right now, but my biggest questions about this team is really the big man depth and how they go about, the big man. But they don't have to defend Nikola Jokic right now. That's not their biggest thing. The biggest question is going to be, how do you defend a Kristaps Porzingis? How do you defend a Joel Embiid? And they showed in last year's playoffs, they could kind of find the way, and that was throwing Mitchell Robinson in. So my thing is, hey, how do you figure out how to, get the depth of your big man? Because right now it's just Mitchell Robinson and Precious Achiuwa. Besides that, this team is gross. I'm sorry. And when we're discussing depth on the Dante DiVincenzo side, I have no questions about this depth, right? I go look at this team. They have quite possibly a top 3, if not one of the best starting lineups in the entire NBA. I mean, you got Jalen Brunson. I think he is an absolute star. And Cat also doesn't have to be the number 2. He was asked to be the number 2 in Minnesota. He was asked to be, hey, outside of Anthony Edwards, we need you to score the ball, because that's not Jaden McDaniels. That's not going to be Rudy Gobert. And you got Mikal Bridges who can do that. You got, OG Anunoby. You got the guys off of the bench that can do that. And that's why I'm not also too concerned, because you look at the guys off the bench. Miles McBride showed up in big-time spots and big-time minutes last year in the playoffs. And that's what makes me confident in this team, because I like Miles McBride. I also like the rookie that they got, Tyler Kolek, this year. I think he's going to be their future, sixth man. And quite possibly, another guy that was underrated, they got Cam Payne. Cam Payne is another shifty, backcourt guy. I'm not concerned about the scoring on this on this bench at all. And I think that's what this team needed, right? That's what this team needed. They needed an offensive push, because that was their issue last year. They had Josh Hart, they had OG, they had the grit and grind guys, and now you're getting the offense. So I think that this is a great move for the Knicks. And I know, talking to a lot of Knicks fans, their immediate thoughts were, I'm concerned. They love Julius Randle for some reason. And I think a lot of that has to do with, after the OG Anunoby trade, when they were all healthy, I believe they were 11-1 or 11-2 with Julius Randle in the lineup. Then Julius Randle got hurt, and that was the rest of the season. But there's a lot of outside factors also that we have to take into account, right? And the outside factors, respectfully, are contracts. Julius Randle is on the final year of his contract, and he's got a player option this year. So what are you going to do? If Julius Randle opts out of his contract this year, you got to pay him a shit ton of money. So that's coming up. And what are you going to do? Are you going to re-sign a guy who just had a brutal shoulder injury, who's quite possibly not even healthy right now? Are you going to re-sign him to a 4-year, 5-year contract? I'm not. A guy who, in my opinion, has had effort issues on the court. A guy, in my opinion, who has been inconsistent on the court. A guy who hasn't been, consistently, when he was tasked, hey, go, we need you to get a bucket. He's not consistent on the scoring end. So I think Julius Randle could have worked out, but you have to look at the long-term future of this. And they would have had to pay not only Julius Randle a massive contract, but Dante DiVincenzo. So yes, Cat's contract is absurd, but I like what this does for the team. And then looking at the Minnesota side of things, Malik, my biggest justification for this is Cat has a massive contract, 4-year. I think he's getting 30 to 40 million a year. You have to repay Naz Reid. He's, coming up on his contract this year. So it seems like, the fans love him. The team loves him. He's going to be thrust into a role, whether it's, playing a lot more minutes, but they love him. So you got to re-sign him, and he's going to make at least 20 to 30 million a year. Mm-hmm. And Rudy Gobert's coming up on his contract. So this makes me think that they're going to re-sign Rudy. They're going to re-sign Naz Reid. And they're doing this to maximize their window with Anthony Edwards. And I do think that is possible, because quite frankly, Cat in the playoffs, he sucked. Right. Foul trouble, wasn't consistent, and maybe Minnesota says, hey, Julius Randle can be that guy for us. So I would be concerned about the spacing with Julius Randle, but the thing that goes under the radar is the bench now. Their bench is absolutely absurd right now. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, they got a rookie, I'm forgetting from where, I think Dillingham, I believe Rob Dillingham, who I think is going to replace Mike Conley within the next couple of years. He's an absolute stud. And then you look at what they just added in Dante DiVincenzo, to provide the scoring. That's what they were lacking against the Dallas Mavericks in the playoffs. So I know it went a little long-winded
No,
there.
you're good. You keep going.
But
Keep going.
no, yeah, I think that the Dallas Mavericks took it to them in the playoffs, and that's my concern with this team was you got to get scoring from somewhere outside of Anthony Edwards, and this does it for you. So Dante DiVincenzo, I think, is a huge piece for them, and quite possibly, I think both teams got better in this, and
I agree.
this helps both
I
teams
agree
in the
with you.
future.
I know people are saying that. I saw my guy Mike start talking about the New York Knicks depth, and he is a Knicks fan, so I certainly will listen to him on that. But I still think your depth is sitting pretty good. I don't love Campaign. Daniel likes Campaign. But Deuce McBride, good player. Obviously, OG Anunoby is a guy who I'm honest with you, I forgot he was there. He was so good for the Raptors for so long. Remember when he got traded there and he dealt with his injury, obviously. But him, Josh Hart, Karl Anthony Towns. I'm curious what position Karl Anthony Towns is going to play. Is he going to play center?
He's gonna have to, I think. And
So
that's my issue.
Yeah. So I guess you're probably not getting the most willing rebounder. You're probably getting a guy that's more of an offensive threat. Mitchell Robinson coming off the bench, Precious Achiuwa. These are guys that I think we shouldn't forget about.
My one last point I'll say, and this is what does concern me, is I went back and rewatched how the Nuggets played the Timberwolves.
Yeah.
Their best defender of Jokic was Cat. And that's what they're going to have to figure that out because Rudy Gobert did get torched by Jokic. Yeah. And you're going to be tasked with, hey, Naz Reid is going to have to take that role. Or maybe it's going to be Julius Randle. But I will say that Cat was, for all the outside noise around him, he was their best defender on Jokic. And he actually played pretty damn well. So I'm curious to see because the Nuggets, they ain't going away. So how you got to defend Jokic remains to be seen.
I agree. And let's keep the conversation rolling. Again, that's us talking about the Knicks trading for superstar Karl Anthony Towns. And we also didn't mention this is a bit of a homecoming for Karl Anthony Towns. This guy grew up in New Jersey, basically, right? New York is right over the bridge. So this is big for him in a lot of ways. But excited to see how that team shapes up and how it comes together. Hopefully they're a force, but not too big of a force. So the Boston Celtics can repeat, if you will. If you guys could do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload content from the TWSN studios. Let's keep the conversation moving on, Daniel. Big news in the NFL. Yesterday, Rashee Rice leaves the Chiefs game with an apparent serious leg injury after a Pat Mahomes interception. I guess we won't show the play, obviously, but Rashee, I guess Patrick Mahomes was trying to make a tackle. Rashee Rice's leg goes the other way when he hits him, basically. This is a massive loss for the Chiefs. Massive loss for the Chiefs. They don't get too much bigger than this. I feel like Rashee Rice has been the best offensive weapon outside of the names Patrick Mahomes for the Kansas City Chiefs for this season. Now, obviously, he had an offseason that was dealt with a lot of stuff where we thought maybe he wouldn't be eligible to play, obviously. But this sucks to see a great player, a really emerging player for them go out with such a significant injury, and it's expected from all accounts that it's expected to be in either a torn ACL or a tear that would effectively end his season. I got a feel for Kansas City Chiefs faithful and that fan base. It's a rough loss. Daniel, what do you think of some of the impact that's going to have on the Kansas City Chiefs season, as well as the loss of Rashee Rice?
My issue with this, and prayers to him, hope he gets better. I think that the Chiefs, first off, I love how they run their organization because quite possibly, Malik, this is what I expect. First off, you saw what they did this offseason. They went out. They added Marquise Brown. He went out for the season. They went in the first round of the draft, added Xavier Worthy. And you see what they do with their weapons. And this is what concerns me. Malik, I'm not going to be shocked if within the next week we're discussing Devontae Adams on their team or Amari Cooper, to be honest with you. And I think that's what is so great about this Chiefs organization is, hey, they understand what it takes to win right now. And they understand that they are going for history right now. And quite possibly, listen, they're saying respectfully, fuck the rest of our, the 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the road. We need to win now. And that's what makes me confident in this Chiefs team still. With their receiving core right now, I feel like Juju Smith-Schuster is going to step right into that role. We saw him do it 2 weeks ago. He scored the touchdown when Rashee Rice got hurt. And I think it's going to put added pressure on the weapons, but I would not be shocked once again if we did see a guy get traded to their team like a Cooper or Devontae Adams, and you're going to give up a second-round pick or you're going to give up a third-round pick. But at this point, I don't feel like the Chiefs are going to even bat an eye at that point. They understand what they have on their roster. They understand what it's going to take to win. And if you go add Devontae Adams or Amari Cooper to their team right now, it's going to make a world of a difference. And it's going to really, lessen the blow that Rashee Rice got hurt with. So it remains to be seen if this current roster right now stays and they don't go out and add anybody. I would definitely be a little concerned, but all around right now, if I had to guess, I think that they're going to try to make a move for a wide receiver, and it really wouldn't shock me if they go out and do it. So we'll see. But Xavier Worthy is a guy who fantasy owners, I'm sure we'll talk fantasy. He's going to be an absolute stud. But like I said, I think I've got a feeling that they're going to either trade for a guy, and I also think Juju can step into that role and be pretty okay in that role.
I think they've tried to exasperate every attempt to make sure that they had a receiving corp they could be proud of. Obviously, I think it was last year they had a really rough start with their receiving corps where they had the most drops in the league from a receiving standpoint, and obviously Pat Mahomes has had a lot of turnover worthy led plays, and you got to just think a guy in Rashee Rice who was building up a lot of consistency with him. I'm very curious to see who emerges. I believe in my heart a guy like Travis Kelce is probably on the downward trend personally. I understand the game he had yesterday, but I also think that's the way the Chargers have always played him. They'd rather Travis Kelce give those yards to Travis Kelce, and he was able to eat. But I don't know. I just think that I feel like this is a big loss more than what we're talking about for the Kansas City Chiefs. And we're hoping for a speedy recovery for a guy like Rashee Rice, and we're hoping to see good football, for the Chiefs, because good football, when we have good football, everybody wins. And I think that's what we want to see at the end of the day. Want to also remind you guys, do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload content. It's not on the slate, but I just want to say something really, really quickly, because I wouldn't be me if I didn't say it. How about the Crimson Tide?
Yes.
How about the Crimson Tide? How about Alabama? They did what I said they were going to do in a big way. It was one hell of a game. I don't like the way that we ended things, if you will. And but I like the way that we were able to hold on to a lead and keep it going, Daniel. I got to be honest with you. So very, very proud of those guys. Is Ryan Williams the best receiver in college football?
I mean, he might be.
He might, right? We gotta have that conversation. The dude definitely. So I saw a tweet the other day where it says Ryan Williams has moves like Kyrie Irving on the football field. And when you watch the guy, his start and stop ability, he's got to make defenders misses. Absolutely insane. I don't know. I'm just very, very proud about how they showed up. I didn't, that was a huge victory for Kalen DeBoer to make make his mark right with the Alabama Crimson Tide. And I agree with you, man. I agree with you, Will Holland. He said, "Don't give a piss about none but the Tide." That's what Will Holland said, Daniel. But watching that game live, man, seeing them, obviously seeing Georgia come back with a fury. We were at Topgolf and I'm watching the game and I'm like, oh man, here we go. Please don't be a thing. And then you just see Alabama roaring back, man. You see them, first of all, the guts, the grit of a guy like Jalen Milroe to make that throw. Trust his guy was going to win.
Yeah.
This kid's 17 years old. 17 years old. What was you doing at 17?
I don't even know what I was doing. I was in
skateboard,
high school.
Maybe in California. Something
I
like
was chilling, to be honest, playing video games.
But man, listen, no, I at the end of the day, I think that was a huge victory. And we'll get more to that, as the conversation continues to go on. But I want to move on over. We were just talking about the Chargers. Let's talk about Justin Herbert. Justin Herbert seemed to have a little bit of a meltdown on the sideline. Take a look at this.
You gotta beat the best. You gotta beat the best. To beat the best. You gotta beat the best.
That was Justin Herbert after that was Justin Herbert after the Chargers lost. And this is very alarming to me because this is a guy that's not used to losing. This is a guy that's allergic to losing. Really. He won a lot at Oregon. And since he's gotten to the Chargers, no matter how we expect their team, how good we expect their team to be, this is a guy that seems to be very, I guess he's very consistent. He's never too high, never too low, always remains even keeled. But man, I don't know, man. I don't know. It sucks to see Justin Herbert finally going through this. And I saw some people making some comments saying that, well, Justin Herbert is probably just fed up with the Charger way, and it sucks. Will this guy go through his career almost with the Philip Rivers syndrome? I made a take last year where I said these guys are a lot of like their career trajectory is a lot of like more than what people give it credit. What say you, Dan?
Yeah, I think that it's interesting because this was supposed to be the turnaround for them, right? This was supposed to be the time where you got the new head coach, you've got the, new culture in the locker room, and it's looked good so far. It's looked good at points, right? It's looked good with the rushing, focus of them, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards. But at some point, it is going to come to a head to where, hey, you guys got to put up or shut up. And it's respectfully, the rushing game isn't going to be the future. That's not how you can dictate every single game. And when you look at the weapons on the team, they got to add more. I like Lad McConkey. I think that they just also need more reps under their belt. And I do think that Herbert needs more time after, he's suffered a little injury. And I mean, respectfully, it gets under his skin. So I can totally see what his standpoint is. Listen, you were winning from the jump against your divisional rivals, the team that everybody says is the best team in the NFL, and you go out there and you blow the game. You blow the game, especially after they lost their star wide receiver. So I think it's frustrating. And when I look at this Chargers team, I am a little concerned about what their future is. And I'm concerned about Justin Herbert, right? Because Justin Herbert at this point, he has dealt with multitude of injuries. And we got to see him at some point. He's 26 years old. I believe this is his fourth or fifth year, at least his fifth year in the NFL. And I think that this is the point where you got to continue and you got to show up and be that superstar. It's the same conversation we had with a guy like Joe Burrow, right? I think Joe Burrow is how, you should respond from the injury. Look at how he's looked the past three weeks, right? The dude's thrown for 800, 7 touchdowns and 1 interception. And Justin Herbert's he needs to get in that rhythm and he needs to feel that success. And I think that that's where, success and winning cures all. And I think that that's where it's going to be the next go-to for the Chargers. You just got to win, right? I believe the record, I think they're 2-2 right now. And that's fine. That's fine, but that's not what the expectation was. The expectation was you were going to make the playoffs. The expectation is with Jim Harbaugh, you are going to go far. So I think that this team really, it comes down to Justin Herbert's got to get back healthy and he's got to get back in a rhythm. And I do have a lot of questions. It's almost he's in the same boat in my eyes as a Trevor Lawrence. And I think that that's where, these two quarterbacks are very similar in the sense that they had upbringings and they've had, the early start in the career with extreme highs. You go, especially look at Justin Herbert, his rookie year, had an extreme high. And then ever since it has been highs, lows, playoff loss, get dropped way low, and then get rid of Brandon Staley. And now you get Jim Harbaugh in there. So I think that this team, they've got a lot to figure out. And I do think that they are really talent depleted in a lot of different positions, whether it is, on the defense at points, and even look at the rest of the offense. So all around in this team, I'm not too concerned because I have liked what I've seen all around from Jim Harbaugh's Chargers. I've liked how they focus on the offense line, but with injuries to both Joe Alt and then their other tackle, I think that it's going to be a slow progression. I think that maybe Justin Herbert was expecting this season to just immediately turn around and immediately be something different than Brandon Staley. No, you still got to go out and win football games, and the culture only takes you so far. So I think that Justin Herbert overreacted, but I think he's probably frustrated. And respectfully, I think I would be too. So you got to figure it out. And I think what would cure this? Winning. Getting into the playoffs, in my eyes, is a win for this team with Jim Harbaugh. You go into next offseason, you regroup, you add more talent into the weapon room. And next year, in the second year with the head coach, typically is when we see that massive jump. So you got to see patience from Justin Herbert, but I think maybe he's running out of patience. And I wouldn't be running out of patience because it's also, you're part of the issue as well. You're not playing like a superstar. You are, playing like a below average quarterback. You're playing like a fine quarterback. So you got to figure out the new system. It's going to take time, but all around, Malik, I think this was just an overreaction from him. And I hope he doesn't let it affect him the rest of the season.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I can't blame that guy. This is a guy that has wanted to win for the Chargers. This is, a dude who came with a lot of hype. A lot of people were excited about him, excited about his potential. And they just have not put it together. You see guys that, are around either or in your draft class or around your draft class have more success than you. Guys like Tua Tagovailoa, guys like Joe Burrow, guys like Lamar Jackson, who wasn't I don't know. I don't think he was in his draft class. No, he wasn't in his draft class, but he's still a guy that had a lot of has had a lot of success, won 2 MVPs, right? And you probably are looking at it a little bit like, what am I doing? I'm going through another coaching change. This is Justin Herbert's third coach.
Yeah.
Since he came to the league. Anthony Lynn, then you had Staley, and now you have Harbaugh.
Mhm.
And here's what I will say, though. It shows you that it means something, though, to him. I think that's the importance of it. And then here's what I will say. Harbaugh is a coach that I believe in. He's a dude that has won everywhere he's been. Stanford, Michigan, San Francisco. I think he'll build a winner in LA. You just hope that you don't lose a guy mentally in Justin Herbert before that takes place. And I think that's a conversation that we need to be having. But if you guys could do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload content. Daniel, let's keep the conversation rolling. Doug Pederson. He seems to be losing his locker room. He was almost at a loss of words, right? When it came to I guess him being asked questions in the media, and they were pretty much asking him like, well, what should change? Should something change? And he's like, I think I'll consider it. And it's just a weird spot for the Jacksonville Jaguars right now, but roll the clip, Daniel.
I'll take it into consideration.
Okay, anybody else? Thanks, Coach. So,
You could tell that's a guy that's right now fed up with just the way things are going. And you're 0-4 now. You got to be feeling the pressure. The pressure is mounting. You're like, okay, what's going on? Are we at the team that we thought we could potentially be? If you're going to be honest with yourselves, like this is a guy in Doug Pederson who the Jacksonville Jaguars, they played a great game yesterday. They played a good game yesterday. Trevor Lawrence looked better, looked improved yesterday. He didn't look stuck in the mud. He didn't look like he was lost out there. You finally looked at it and you said, oh, wow, maybe this team could be something. And for it to fall apart the way it did, you got to just feel that maybe the stress has to be getting to a guy in Dougie P. You got to be feeling that the stress is getting to a guy in Trevor Lawrence. What did you make of that, Daniel? I think 0-4, we got to have a little bit of a different conversation, right? I think we got to be having a conversation that maybe he is, I guess time is ticking. Maybe he will be on the chopping block in the next week or two. Something needs to change for sure. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of questions around this team. And I do think the thing with Trevor Lawrence, we discussed this with our guy Parker Blake, is that Trevor may not be this top 5 quarterback. Trevor may not be this top 3 quarterback, but he's still a quarterback you can win with. He is not a terrible quarterback. He is not a bottom 5 quarterback. He's a fine quarterback right now. He's a guy where he can have success. So that's why I can't pin an 0-4 start. I can't pin losing your last 10 games all on Trevor Lawrence. I think you do have to look at the coaches. And I think that what Doug Pederson said, here's his quote from the game after somebody asked about Press Taylor, the offense coordinator, said, hey, would you ever take over play calling duties from him? His quote was, for what? I thought he called a great game. As coaches, we can't go out there and make the plays, right? It's a two-way street. So you guys can sit here and point the finger all you want, and that's fine. Point it right at me. I can take it. He's frustrated. And I think that was a very fascinating response to say it's a two-way street and the coaches can't go out there and play. That shows that you are looking for somebody to blame. And whether Doug Pederson feels he's in the right, from my assumption, I think that he does. I think that Doug Pederson is blaming the players. And as a leader, as the coach, that is a terrible thing, respectfully, to say after an 0-4 start. How does that get the team back on the high horse, ready to go next week? And I think at some point you do have to question, respectfully, I understand Doug Pederson, excellent offense coordinator, Super Bowl winning head coach, all these accolades over there with Philadelphia. What have you done for me recently? You're 1-9 in your past 10 games. And it really comes down to that. What have you done for me recently? And the dude has lost recently. That's the fact of the matter. At 0-4, with as much talent as you have, yes, there could be, better acquisitions, I feel like, and maybe the offensive line has played pretty poorly at certain points, you still got a lot of talent on your team, and this team should no reason be 0-4. So Doug Pederson, whether you like it or not, whether you want people to question your job or not, they're going to. And respectfully, I think that they should. 0-4 is abysmal. 0-4 means you're most likely not going to make the playoffs. And Doug Pederson, I think we can both agree that your team right now headed into the season with expectations to make the playoffs. And I think it's that simple. Did you expect to make the playoffs, Doug? Okay. Are you falling short of expectations? Yes. What is the cure to that? And it's either going to be winning or you're gone. One of the two, because they're not getting rid of Trevor Lawrence, whether we like it or not. So you're on the hot seat. And what changes are you going to make? And if I was in his shoes, I would try to make some drastic changes right now to cover my ass, to save my ass in the head coaching role, or I'm going to be out of a job in less than 4 weeks. So,
yeah, I listen, it sucks to see this all turn into, what it's turning into, this fiasco, I would say. But what I will say, I think sometimes a lot of coaches come in with a lot of hype, Super Bowl ring, and they probably believe that, hey, you know what? I'm the guy, right? I can do no wrong. And I think part of it as a coach is be able to look at yourself in the mirror and reflect and say, you know what, maybe I didn't do something correctly to help my team be in this position to be successful. So when I look at it, I think it's one of those things where I think that, Doug Pederson is losing the locker room. And I really do wonder what his leadership style is because, I remember when he got let go in Philly, we all questioned what they were doing. But for you to get let go in Philly after losing, after winning a Super Bowl just a few years prior, and for that to fall apart as fast as it did, and now you're in Jacksonville and you're expected to be the guy that brings stability, veteran head coach presence, and a guy that has won, for you now to be losing the Jacksonville Jaguars locker room, where you got to feel maybe his leadership style isn't as good as we thought it was. Remember, they did sign 18 free agents the year the Eagles won the Super Bowl. They did. They were coming off a down season, and then they won 18. Then they signed 18 free agents, and they won the Super Bowl. So you got to wonder: was he more a product of the talent that was around him versus his actual schematics and his team? Because if you look at it, a lot of his coaching, his coaching staff got jobs off of that performance. A lot of the people that were a part of that staff got a lot of jobs off that performance. When you look at it, none of them are really doing well right now. None of them. So you got to wonder. I don't mean to put too much of a emphasis on a guy like Doug Pederson falling short. Falling short with the Jacksonville Jaguars, but it does create for an interesting conversation. Daniel, what say you?
Yeah, the final thing I want to mention is, and I didn't realize this, Press Taylor was the quarterback's coach for the Eagles. And one of our guys, I think it was Mike Shaw, he said, correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't he pull this before he got fired from Philly? He did. And this was one of the things where it was looking at the Eagles were questioning Press Taylor. And Doug Pederson was saying, hey, no, you're not going to do that. They were discussing firing Press Taylor, and they said, hey, Press Taylor may not be, good for your staff. And this isn't to say that Doug Pederson shouldn't have control of his staff, because he should. But when shit goes south, respectfully, you can't be all buddy-buddy with these guys. You have to go and make changes. And if I'm Doug Pederson and what he did with Philly, it didn't look like he went that way. It looked like he stayed true to his roots. He stayed true to his guys, like a Press Taylor, like his other guys on the staff. And he said, hey, if we're going down together. And it looks like this is the case, because you could make the case that Press Taylor is a part of the issue. As the offensive coordinator, he should be, and he should share some of the blame. So I think that it comes down to Doug Pederson. Hey, you got to make changes, whatever it takes right now. And this is where all things are off the table. You got to it is go time. You're facing the Colts team next week, which is a divisional matchup with Joe Flacco, which I arguably believe could be a better team right now than with, an inconsistent and a hampered Anthony Richardson. So Joe Flacco looked pretty good last week. And that's what it comes down to. Hey, you got to make changes now. I don't think that they can head into this next week just doing the same thing and hoping for success. So, Doug Pederson, I think that he's staying true to his guys like Press Taylor, and I do have a lot of doubts that, hey, respectfully, if you can't win this upcoming week 0-5, there's no reason why you should walk into that door. Your key card should get shut off after that Sunday night game against the Indianapolis Colts. So Doug Pederson, as much as this may suck and as much as you can blame other things, respectfully, 0-5 is a place that you will not survive or should not survive. So I think that they can they should be able to take care of business against the Colts.
Another conversation that I want to switch over to, but before we do, make sure you guys give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content. Let's move it on over to New York. Let's talk about the New York Football Jets. Everyone's offseason darling, everyone's Super Bowl favorite going into the into the offseason. Obviously, with the acquisition of Rodgers, having Rodgers back in the fold after coming off the Achilles injury, it seems to be not what a lot of people expected. Him and Robert Saleh don't seem to necessarily be on the same page. And I don't need to read the tea leaves. You can really just look at it when your coach says one thing and then the guy gets on the mic and says something completely different. Robert Saleh made a point of emphasis to talk about maybe the Jets need to change up their cadence, right? They had several penalties yesterday. I believe like 52 yards, maybe a little bit more, five false start penalties. And he's like, maybe we need to change up the cadence. And Rodgers gets on the mic and says, well, I don't think there's anything about changing up the cadence. Maybe it's coaching a little better, or holding guys a little more accountable or something like that. To me, I don't know, from the outside looking in, that feels a little bit like it was a little bit of a shot at the coach. Daniel, what were your thoughts on Robert Saleh and Aaron Rodgers seemingly not being on the same page?
I think that they're frustrated. I think that they both are. As much as, yes, we can discuss Robert Saleh, and I do want to discuss, I don't think that he's the guy for the job. This falls on Aaron Rodgers. I'm sorry. It does. You are the guy that they brought in here to be that superstar, and he's looked good at moments, right? He still throws a beautiful ball. It's a pretty ball. What are we doing? Your record ain't showing up, and you put up 9 points. The Denver Broncos defense looked great, yes, but respectfully, anytime your defense can hold an opposing team to 10 or less points, you have to win the game.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Rodgers ain't doing that. He's not cutting it. So yes, I'm going to blame Robert Saleh. I think he shares a lot of the blame. But Malik, we discussed this even yesterday. Great quarterbacking can overcome bad coaching. He is not playing like a great quarterback right now. He's playing like a fine quarterback right now. So I think that there is a lot of different moving parts. I just don't think that they're on the same page. You look at even Nathaniel Hackett, right? He's the guy that brought in, who was supposed to be on the same page as Aaron Rodgers. They worked together in Green Bay. It's going to shit right now. And I do think that this is sort of the same thing that went on with a Tom Brady in New England, right? You go look at his final year in New England. I still think that Rodgers can win a Super Bowl right now. I think he's still a capable quarterback to do that. But the situation around him isn't great. Yes, you have weapons like Garrett Wilson, like a Breece Hall, but they are not a cohesive unit. So all around, I think that Rodgers is playing conservative. I think that Rodgers isn't playing up to his full potential, and he shares a lot of that blame. But I think that this whole situation right now is a complete mess. And like I said, I brought up the Tom Brady point because in his final year with the Patriots, he looked abysmal. He was, you go look at the stats, his completion percentage was bottom third in the league. You go look at his yardage was not there in the first half of games outside of crunch time. And then you look at the games, they're saying, why is Tom Brady throwing the ball out of the bounds? Why is he throwing it into the dirt? It's because nothing was working. And right now with the New York Jets, nothing is working. And quite possibly the biggest play that was brought up in that game, the dude got sacked hard. And that's a take that a lot of quarterbacks can take. Josh Allen took that hit, came right back on the field, and was good. Aaron Rodgers is 40-something years old. You're getting older. You can't be taking those hits. So I think that there's a lot of growing pains, and quite possibly that this New York Jets team, it ain't working. And I don't think it's going to work unless you go out and make some drastic changes. But this situation is a complete mess, Malik.
I agree with you, man. It was a complete mess. It has been planning out the way they had expected, but I do believe that Aaron Rodgers is getting older. I don't know if he's the same player. I don't know if he's as comfortable as he once was with things. And I think it's showing a little bit. And I think also, I'm going to give it grace a little bit. Maybe it's him being getting acclimated to a new system, getting acclimated to a new positioning, a new role, and going from there. It's going to be interesting to see sort of what takes place and what happens with them. But let's keep the conversation rolling, Daniel, if we can. But before we do, actually, do us a favor. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload content. That's the one thing about having Daniel now as a producer. It's me trying to do a bunch of different things, and while also trying to give him his little increments and stuff like that as well. But let's move it on over to the Bengals. The Bengals beat the Carolina Panthers, and now the conversation is being had if the Bengals found themselves. Here's what I thought. I thought it was very sloppy football towards the end. I thought the defense, again, I'll be able to judge the defense correctly once we see Sheldon Rankins and BJ Hill back in the fold, because I do believe the interior of the defensive line is struggling a little bit. Chris Jenkins, wow. That's a guy that needs to play football more. He's a good player. If he's anything like what his dad was, which I think he could be, I think he's going to be a good player for the Cincinnati Bengals, Daniel. I really believe that. I think that Chris Jenkins is a guy that needs to see more playing time, and I understand those things are sort of earned, especially being a rookie. But this is an opportunity for him to emerge with guys like BJ Hill, with guys like Sheldon Rankins out, and I think that he will do so. Daniel, what say you?
I thought that he looked good, and he was the guy, quite possibly, when you look at this, draft class, you want to see guys that you say, holy shit, that was a damn good pick. You go look at the Titans. We discussed Devondre Sweat.
Mm-hmm.
You go look at these other receivers, obviously in the top half of the first round. Rome Odunze looks like a star. Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors looks like stars. And the rest of the crop, you go look in the second, the third round. Braylon Allen has had strides with the New York Jets. Chris Jenkins made that statement this week, and he gave me respectfully everything I need to know about him. He had a huge fourth down stop at the beginning of the game, and that's what set the tone quite possibly for this entire game. The Panthers would have came out and scored on that first drive. I think we could be discussing a different game right now. So I think that Chris Jenkins made a huge play, and I think he's got a long, long career with the Cincinnati Bengals, and quite possibly right now the pick is looking like a great second-round pick for the Bengals. So very excited about him, and he adds a lot to this defense that, that quite possibly that they need it, right? You look at Chris Jenkins and the rest of this defensive line. Sheldon Rankins injured, BJ Hill injured, Josh Tupou or Jay Tufele is fine. The rest of this defensive line is fine, but it's like you need that guy who's going to come out here and play like a star. And Chris Jenkins had moments. He had spurts in his second official game in the NFL. So I like Chris Jenkins a lot. And I think that he showed up why that he was the second round pick. And I think that he's going to, like I said, have a long, long career with the Cincinnati Bengals. And looking at the rest of the defensive line, this is where the conversation starts for the Bengals. And I think that this is where the conversation ends, respectfully. We can discuss the offense like we will in a second. But my three pillars of the NFL really are star quarterback, great offensive line, and a great pass rush. If you can have all three, I'm very confident you can win a Super Bowl. And I hate to dumb it down that simply, but you go look at teams last year that had a great pass rush, that had a great offensive line, the Detroit Lions, the Baltimore Ravens, the Kansas City Chiefs with their defensive line, their ability to simulate pressure, the 49ers with their great defensive line and their amazing rushing scheme. Those are the teams that make it deep into the playoffs, and that's where it really comes down to, in my eyes, with the Cincinnati Bengals team. Like I said, we'll discuss the offense in a second, but Trey Hendrickson, hopefully he's not out for too long. But even with Trey Hendrickson, what are we doing? What's your plan outside of him? Myles Murphy comes back this week, and I'm excited about him. I think that he's got potential. I think that he can be good. You got to simulate pressure, and I am concerned about this. And I'm just at this point, it's a wait and see approach. I like when they bring Mike Hilton off the edge. I like when they bring simulated pressure. You go look at the interception with Andy Dalton. What happened? You brought pressure. Akeem Davis-Gaither, and I believe they brought one more guy. I don't know if it was Wilson or if they brought Hilton off the edge, but that's how you create turnovers. And what is this team? They are a team that is a bend but don't break. And we are going to win based off our turnovers. If we don't get a single turnover, it's going to be up to our offense to put up 35 to 40 points. And that's not how the Bengals defense plays. They play very turnover heavy. And I think that how do you do that? You have to simulate pressure. So all around, I think that how this defense played, I thought Joseph Ossai had one of his best games of his career. But is he the guy that's going to continue to do it time in and time out? I think it remains to be seen. So all around, the pass rush is really where my biggest concern is. But when you look at the rest of the positives, I think the offense looks great. I think that they had their spurts where, they have everything that they need to be a successful top 5 offense in the NFL. The weapons look great. T. Higgins was consistent, right? He had, multiple just consistent grabs over the middle of the field, quick slants, quick curl routes, third down guy. He was the one who got this offense into a rhythm. Jamar Chase, stud, top 3 wide receiver. And then the rest of the weapons, it remains to be seen. You have to utilize these guys like a Gesicki, like a Jermaine Burton, but they have everything in front of them. And then we discussed this, but even the offensive line. The offensive line looks amazing, giving Joe Burrow so much time. So this offense is slowly, yes, I think the offense found themselves. And it comes down to, like we discussed before, Joe Burrow. He's got to play at a superstar level. He played at a good level yesterday. I think that you look at the numbers he's putting up MVP numbers right now. 830 yards, 7 tutties, and 1 interception in the past 3 games. Those are MVP caliber numbers. Those actually lead the NFL in the past 3 years. Over the past 3 weeks. And it comes down to his down-to-down consistency. He still has a little bit of happy feet in the pocket at times. So all around, I think that Joe Burrow, you got 12 more weeks to get in rhythm, and I think that he will. And I'm not concerned about this offense. It's going to come down to the pass rush, and I think that's, in my eyes, if I were to project into the future, the pass rush will make or break if the Bengals make the Super Bowl. So
wow. Let's hold our horses for a little bit.
Well, yeah, that's long term. That's long term for sure.
Let's see if they can get past the Ravens first.
I would agree.
And do some other good stuff in the division and conference and take care of business at home before we even start looking ahead. But I thought the Bengals look good offensively for the most part. I if there are some areas of concerns, I would say Joe Burrow, I would like him to have a better feel for his other weapons outside of Jamar Chase. I understand you want to feed those guys. I understand you want to get those guys involved, but there are other guys that were getting open. There was a lot of check downs when it came down to guys like Zach Moss and Chase Brown and stuff like that. I would like to see Mike Gesicki get a little more love in there. But all in all, I thought the Bengals played fine offensively, defensively. Again, I'll reserve my judgment until they get some of those guys back. But the concerns on the back end, there were some people asking about the Cam Taylor-Britt thing.
Yes.
I have no idea why he struggled as much as he did. I think that certain receivers just match up a little bit better than him. And I think Deontay Johnson's always going to be a guy that's going to be able to route your guy up, especially if your free safety is not in the position that he's supposed to be in. Hint, hint. So I think I definitely think there were some issues, some areas of concern for this Bengals defense, especially on the back end. And it's crazy. We were really putting more of a focus when it came to the pass rush on the defensive line and stuff like that. But, I guess we didn't pay enough attention to what could happen on the back end. You expect when you have veterans back there like Geno Stone, Von Bell, that maybe they'd be able to find themselves being in the right spot. Von Bell got a pick, which was huge for him as well. But I would have ideally liked to see just a little bit more from the secondary on the back end. Those are some of my thoughts when it comes to the Bengals. Let us know what your thoughts were in the comment section. Do you think the Bengals found themselves? Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or when we upload content. We're moving over to the fantasy football segment, and it wouldn't be a fantasy football Monday if we weren't joined by TWSN fantasy football guy. Sorry, Steve Bradshaw. I don't know what's going on with me today. I had a moment for a second where I couldn't speak. Steve, welcome, my man. How's it going?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Good, man. So I want to get with some of your takeaways, obviously, from just the early action of week 3, Sunday. And, obviously, we still have tonight's Monday night game. But what were your initial thoughts on some of the games? What were some of your what were some players that I guess that surprised you when it came to fantasy this past weekend?
Yeah, one was Derrick Henry. I kind of knew how it was going to turn out for him if the Ravens ended up getting ahead. He was going to dominate in that game if they went out and got ahead. They did. So not really a surprise there, but it kind of just goes, I think it's an important thing to bring up that people are kind of, when is he going to fall off? Henry is not a player that we've ever seen before. He's not showing any signs of falling off, and he has just shown that he's a stud. I think he is one of the top running backs in fantasy football until he proves otherwise. Nico Collins dominated as well. He had a few big games earlier in the year. Tank Dell was out, to be fair, but still, I think he kind of just showed that he's the clear alpha. Stephon Diggs is good, but Nico Collins is a bona fide superstar in the NFL. Jaden Reed gets back on track with Jordan Love. That was pretty awesome to see. I think that kind of just cemented the fact that Reed is a fantastic player, and the down weeks he had was because of the scheme, was because he's playing with Malik Willis. So those are my key 3 takeaways at the top. And then Brian Thomas Jr., one player that I was really high on, also looked great as well, despite the Jaguars not playing so well. So those are some of my takeaways.
Yeah, for sure. And I what I want to discuss too, I want to discuss some of these guys that had some poor weeks and even some of the injuries. Right? I want to get your thoughts on, how these teams are gonna, replace some of these guys. So I guess we'll start off. Let's discuss the Rashee Rice. What do you think happens, and how do you grade a guy like Xavier Worthy? Are you trading for him in leagues? And also, my question would be, Juju Smith-Schuster, is he worth a pickup? Because we saw a couple weeks ago he had a good, game with when Rashee Rice was injured for a little bit. So how do you grade Worthy, and do you pick up Juju Smith-Schuster?
Honestly, obviously it really sucks, but I think it kind of just it just makes the Chiefs offense kind of gross for fantasy, to be totally honest, because Xavier Worthy is now most likely the number 1 option, but he operates as a deep threat. He's not a guy that commands a ton of targets. So I'm not really sure that they're going to be able to push him into that. He might get a few more targets, but I don't think it's going to be very consistent on a week-to-week basis, especially because he's a rookie. Yeah. I don't know. I think just all that combination is not really going to make him too much more fantasy relevant than he's already been. I wouldn't trade for him, especially because, a lot of people are kind of already taking that into account. And if anything, honestly, you might be able to sell him a little high, to be honest. People see Patrick Mahomes' number 1 receiver on paper, see that he had a few big spike weeks, and are going to think that's going to be the norm now. Yeah. And I don't really think that's the case just because of how he plays. Talking about Juju Smith-Schuster, I'd say sure, he's probably worth an add in your league as, the last roster spot. Yeah. But at the same time, I wouldn't really be too shocked. I'm not expecting too much from him because we've seen when someone goes down that they're just going to spread the ball around to guys like we've seen Justin Watson kind of come up and just come out of nowhere to get some receptions. You still have Travis Kelce. I mean, I don't know if he'd be the wide receiver or number 3 target still behind Kelce and Worthy. So sure, you can stash him because depending on what the offense looks like, maybe they're going to scheme up Juju in a really good way to make him productive because, Mahomes is still an elite quarterback, but I wouldn't be expecting too much, to be quite honest.
No, completely. So I want to also get your thoughts. So let's discuss some of the guys that everybody was high on heading to the year. Some of the guys that were even drafted high. I want to ask, what do you do with these guys, right? Let's discuss a Bijan Robinson this past week. He got outscored by Tyler Algier. Let's discuss a Garrett Wilson. Garrett Wilson has had a putrid start to the season. And some of these other guys that, you feel that were drafted really high. What do you do with these guys? Even a guy, obviously, like Amari Cooper's another guy who potentially could be traded. He's not having a great season so far with the Browns. But specifically, let's discuss like Garrett Wilson, Bijan. What are you doing with those guys? Are you trading them? Are you trading for them or staying patient with them?
Yeah, I'd say Garrett Wilson is a guy that I actually did talk about buying in my latest article. So I like Wilson. I think there are brighter days ahead for the Jets. Yeah. And I just don't see how this kind of production is going to continue for the rest of the season because he's a guy that wins off targets. He's still getting the snaps. He's still running a ton of routes. And things the Jets can't keep doing what they're doing. So Rodgers is going to have to heavily rely on Wilson if they want to make a true change. So I'm a big fan of Wilson. I think that you're definitely going to see a lot of owners starting to panic. I mean, he's only averaged 10.9 points per game this year, coming off a 7.1 point performance. So you're definitely going to be able to get a pretty good discount on him. If not, get him super cheap. Guys like Bijan Robinson, though, I'm not necessarily buying, but I definitely am not selling. He's a hold for me. It's just weird when you have a guy like Tyler Algier that he's a pretty good running back. He just doesn't get enough credit. So there's going to be some weeks when that coaching staff, Algier's playing well, and they're not just going to turn the ball. People don't understand. If Algier's running well in a week, they're not just going to, stop using him because they want Bijan to get, 15 touches. If Algier's playing well, it doesn't matter to them. They're going to ride a hot hand and even take some work off of Bijan. Honestly, considering how much Algier was involved, having an 11-point performance is a pretty solid floor. So I definitely wouldn't panic on Bijan. I think the Falcons' offense is also going to get better as the year goes on. Kirk Cousins looks a lot better last week than he did in week 1. So I'm expecting that to get better as a whole. But yeah, some of these guys, I'd say a lot of the early first-round picks that are disappointing, some of them you're going to want to buy, but I would say just don't sell low unless you can, because you're going to lose a ton of value. And realistically, it's been 4 weeks, which seems like a long time, but that's really only, a fourth of the season. And there's a lot of football to play.
So my final question to you would be, let's discuss Monday Night Football real quick. We got 2 games on the slate. I want to get your thoughts on 2 players and what you think that they each do. Tony Pollard, the Titans have a pretty damn good matchup against the Dolphins. How good do you think Tony Pollard does, as well as look at the other game, the Seattle Seahawks versus the Detroit Lions, DK Metcalf? I want to get your thoughts on who you think is going to have a better performance, and all around, what do you think of those 2 guys on Monday Night Football?
Ooh, I think I'd have to go with DK in a PPR league just because he has that upside. It should be a pretty good matchup for him. Fairly high scoring game, and he's coming off a 20-point performance last week. So I think Metcalf is a guy that I wasn't really a fan of, but he's been pretty hot recently, especially with Tyler Lockett kind of phasing out of the offense. Geno Smith has looked very good recently. But I think Pollard is also going to have a very good week. I don't expect the Dolphins to be very good. And especially when the Titans have played pretty awful this year, I think finally having an opportunity for them to hopefully get ahead in the game should help Pollard out a ton. And just the bottom line is Spears has been basically a non-factor for the entire year. And Pollard's still a good running back, but he's at the point where he's just not a guy like Breece Hall, Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs, one of those top guys where he's going to be able to overcome the situation, win through the air at a elite rate. So he's going to need some game script help. And this seems like he's finally getting it after the Titans played pretty poorly for most of the year.
I would agree. And I guess we could get this question from Gary Jellison. He had a question about DJ Moore. Is DJ Moore ever going to be playable in fantasy football this year?
I'd say playable, yes. The Bears should keep getting better as the season goes on. Caleb's going to keep getting better as the season goes on. Last week was a great game by them, but, Caleb didn't throw the ball a ton. There's definitely going to be games like that. I'd say more so early in the year when they're going to try and, ease him in. They don't want him to throw the ball 50 times a game like he did in week 3. So I think Caleb's going to develop as well. He's looked at watching him from week 1 to week 4. He's looked night and day, a world's better. So I think that he's definitely going to provide some upside. Yeah. But I will say I was just never as confident in Moore as most because Keenan Allen's still getting a fair amount of targets. Rome Odunze looks phenomenal. So, you're in a situation similar to the Texans, and I don't think DJ Moore is near the talent level of Nico Collins where he's that clear dominant alpha that can overcome any situation. So I think it'll be a flex play. But yeah, right now I wouldn't be shocked if you want to go bench Moore until he goes out there and proves it for you.
Completely.
Steve, as always, we appreciate you coming on the show, my man. And make sure you guys do us a favor, follow Steve, man. His social media links are down in the description as well as you can follow him on Twitter, which is right below his face. Steve, man, I hope that congrats to your Bears, by the way, for getting a victory. I know you probably felt good seeing that. And, finally the Bengals are on the board, man. We'll be joined by Steve again, I believe Friday with because he's one half of the fantasy football law firm here at TWSN with Michael O'Hara. We appreciate you, my man. We appreciate you. And we look forward to having you on Friday. We hope you enjoy the rest of your Monday, and we'll see you soon.
You as well. Thanks for having me.
Yes, sir, Steve. I'll catch you. Guys, make sure you guys do us a favor, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content. Daniel, this is one of my favorite parts of the show where we help try to win people some money. Another profitable weekend took place. Make sure you guys also subscribe into the TWSN Patreon. The QR code should be right above me to the right. And that's where you'll see all of our team's picks, plays that we are betting on each and every single day. But without further ado, Danny, I want you to get to some of your picks, some of your favorite bets for Monday Night Football?
Yeah, I got a lot of favorite bets for this game, and I do personally. I mean, we got 2 games in the slate. The first one I am going to target is going to be the Miami Dolphins and the Tennessee Titans. I think that I'm going with both running backs. I think the Devon A. Chain, I'm fading him. We discussed this on the Friday show. Once again, I'm too much of a fan of this Tennessee Titans defensive line. I think they have too much talent. When you go look at what running backs have done against them, right? You go look at what Breece Hall did against them. He had a 60-something yard game, but one of those was a huge 35-yard within the last 3 minutes of the game. You go look at DeAndre Swift, got absolutely shut out. The running backs haven't been great against them. And then last week, you had Josh Jacobs had a good game, but that's because, they absolutely dominated the Tennessee Titans. And I think that this is going to be a very, very slow game for the rushing side of the Miami Dolphins. Like I said, this Tennessee defensive line is absolutely legit. And you're giving me a running back as prop is at 62.5. They got a quarterback, Tyler Huntley, who is a fine quarterback. He's definitely an upgrade over Skylar Thompson, but I don't think that they're going to be blowing up and blowing out the Tennessee Titans. I think that this is the Dolphins are going to lose this game. I think the Dolphins are going to play from behind. And Devon Achane being at 62.5, I'm absolutely taking this under. Once again, this is another absolute smack, in my opinion. I love taking unders because a lot of times they are, you're not sweating them in the fourth quarter. If this goes according to plan, he's going to have 30 to 40, maybe, heading into the fourth quarter. And obviously he can break off one big run, but give me his under 62.5. And the other one I do like Tony Pollard's over rushing and receiving yards. I believe it's at 70.5, 69.5. And that's just too low in my opinion. He's the guy who's getting 60 to 65% of the snaps out of the running backs. And when you look at all around who's going to be getting touches on this backfield, I think Tony Pollard could have a big time game. And you're giving me 70 yards against a Miami Dolphins defensive line that isn't great. Give me Tony Pollard over 69.5 rushing, receiving yards. Those are my 2 favorite, but I can give you guys some that I absolutely like. Go look at the Seahawks versus Lions game. This is a game where the Seahawks, they're playing in a dome, and Geno Smith has been on absolute fire. I believe they do have Kenneth Walker back, but the weapons that they have with their new offensive coordinator, Ryan Grubb, I'm a huge fan of what Geno Smith has been doing, and his line's only at 250. So his line, give me 250 plus passing yards. I'd also wouldn't even be shocked if he had a little sprinkle on 300 plus, because I look at this Lions secondary. I'm not a fan of it. I don't think that they have a very good secondary. And Geno Smith, I am betting on him to be extremely successful like he's been the past couple weeks. So Geno Smith has been on a roll. He's got the weapons in DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and Jackson Smith, mainly Jackson Smith and Jigba as well. And even out of the backfield, they have utilized the running backs a ton. Zach Charbonnet out of the backfield. They've utilized, Kenneth Walker out of the backfield. So give me Geno Smith over 250 passing yards. And all around, if I'm just looking at these games, the Titans being underdogs, I don't understand it. Being a plus 120, I mean, I can understand it.
Well, Brian Callahan's not that good of a football coach.
I would completely agree.
Yeah.
But I look at the Miami Dolphins. They've looked terrible without Tua. So the Dolphins are at home, and I understand that. If you're putting a gun to my head and you're making me give a little money line parlay, give me the Titans to win and the Lions to win. I think the Lions go out there and win at home. But plus money, the Titans at plus 122 would be another one of my favorite plays. And yeah.
So what I'll say is I'll give you just 2 plays because I don't want to let too much out of the bag, and I don't want our Patreon subscribers to be pissed at me. Make sure you guys subscribe to the TWSN Patreon. But I'm looking at Chikozim Okonkwo for the Tennessee Titans. I expect Will Levis to be going to his tight end a lot in this matchup because of the more favorable matchup inside versus throwing to the outside of the receivers, because the Dolphins do have a good cornerback tandem there, I would say. So I would expect Chikozim to play a big role. For him to have over 2.5 catches is plus money at plus 146. Tyler Boyd to have over 2.5 catches. And again, another safety valve type of guy. And last but not least, I like Sam Laporta as receptions tonight as well. But if you guys want more of our plays and you want to see what we're betting on, make sure you guys subscribe to the TWSN Patreon. But beyond that, give this video a like, subscribe to the channel, turn on post notifications so you guys don't miss when we go live or upload content from TWSN Studios. I'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m., same time, same place, same 1-2 punch with me and Daniel. to talk all things through. And I'll be joined by my guy Parker Blake as we talk more about the Cincinnati Bengals and then potentially emerging in the AFC North and AFC as a whole. We appreciate you guys for tuning in. We appreciate you guys for making us a part of your daily conversation. And make sure you guys tune in tomorrow because tomorrow's Overreaction Tuesday, and I cannot wait for that. Give this video a like, subscribe to the channel. Remember, there's only one way you should be waking up: talking sports, engaging with sports, having the dialogue.